You must be Dutch.
Well, and I thought, well, I might be able to spend some time in the kitchen.
Set up now. You don't need me. You can change your views.
You're the only reason people watch.
So yeah, right.
The five. So she's like reading. Last night she said she was reading experimental literature, and she said it's very abstract.
Must be something I've written.
Well, that's what I.
All right, welcome to Pondering Psalms. We are pondering Psalm 78 this week. It's great to see everyone that's joining us for this and the streaming through YouTube, as well as if you're able to kind of catch it on or take the link from Facebook. We're really glad that you're a part of this. So I'm Curt Austin, and this is my
David
friend
Mullins. David Mullins.
There we are, and the two of us have been pondering Psalms together every week, and we're glad that you're here. So we're here, another Psalm of Asaph that we've been having the privilege of reading. He was so nice to write these down for us and to be a part of it. And so Dave, again, I've spent the last week, and I just have to be honest, I spent the last week reading Psalm 77. I didn't move forward. I forgot to move forward. I really liked Psalm 77, so I've read it for 2 weeks in a row. Usually I'm pretty good about calendaring, but I lost it.
And I know this is my fault because I was on vacation last week and we didn't do the show. And how in the world would you know? How would you know to move on?
I get done with our conversation. I go, okay, and I start. And I don't, you read. I know you read. We do these folks on Saturday mornings, and I know you read. One more day, you then read it. But I've been trying to start then the next day with the new Psalm, but we didn't record it. We didn't do it, and so I was like, well, I just guess I keep. It's a Pavlov's dog. There was no reason to go on, to the next Psalm. I didn't have any desire to salivate for the next one. So folks.
So as I understand it, you're going to do Psalm 77 on your own.
I already did.
Oh, you already did. Okay. And you're going to put, so that'll be, you guys can watch that. And then this will be like the next week. So
that's right. We're a week away. All right. We're burning time. So Dave, Psalm 78, Psalm of Asaph, tell the coming generations. I think that pretty much gives away the whole story for us right there. What'd you learn this week as you were reading through it?
Well, one of the things I love, I guess the whole beginning kind of captured me. Listen to my instructions, and so right when you hear that, you're thinking, "Oh, it's a wisdom psalm,"
That's what I was thinking.
Proverb. Yeah. Open your ears, what I'm saying, for I will speak to you in a parable. And I thought it talked about being a riddle as well, and my screen is small here. But parable, teaching hidden lessons from our past. And so it intrigued me. He's talking about hidden lessons. He's talking about, parables. It's like this wisdom is hidden in the history of the people. And to be honest, it wasn't until yesterday that I think I really gained appreciation for this psalm.
Yeah, and mine's coming today. So, I mean, I think, sometimes it's sometimes it's really late in the week, folks. I mean, it's just the way that works.
Yeah. So, I don't know exactly how you want to tackle this. It's 72 verses.
Yeah, we need to think through this. And if anybody's got any ideas as you're listening to this, and that Psalm 119 is coming up, and that's like 5 weeks worth of discussion. If you got any ideas on how we should do that, please let us know. If you got, I've been doing this for 10 years. You guys are new to the game, and this is how I've always done it. Let us know. I mean, if you got a thought about that.
Yeah.
But 72 verses is just, Asaph just could not put his pen down. He had a lot to say.
Yeah, well, and he did, and really, if you look down at verse 8, this is why. Actually, verse 7 and verse 8. This is why he pens this. So each generation should set its hope anew on God, not forgetting His glorious miracles and obeying his commands, then they will not be like their ancestors, stubborn, rebellious, and unfaithful, refusing to give their hearts to God.
Okay,
So
we can wrap it
high,
up. We've that's perfect.
high praise there.
Well,
What?
no, I mean, I think that's the idea of wisdom literature, right? I mean, you read the proverbs so that you learn things. You know, to heed my teaching. You know, so that we don't have these problems. You don't have these problems. And Asaph's saying this is wisdom, folks.
Yeah,
Now he's doing it in the form of a parable, in the form of a story, but he's actually reflecting on some history. He's saying this is where we've been. What is it? It's that history is repeating itself. If you don't look at this, we're in trouble.
right. Yeah, yeah. And what's the cliche? If you don't know history, you're going to repeat it.
Yeah,
And that's what he doesn't want to happen. So he's basically learn from this, and he goes through these various situations where, like verse 10, talking about these warriors did not keep God's covenant. Oh, I love the imagery of a bow that is crooked, which comes up a couple of times. Oh, actually, you know what? I think I'm not sure what translation this is, to be honest. I've been using NLT, and so I think that's why I didn't see riddle in there. But nevertheless, he says they did not keep God's covenant. They forgot what he had done. That is the point. Here they are in battle, and they turned their backs and fled because they'd forgotten what God had done. And then he goes through some of it. Some of what God had done as he brought them out of Egypt.
right.
And you had noticed that, and you're looking at this, you said, oh, I saw it, striking the rock.
And we actually mentioned that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
That's part of their story.
It is. But the interesting thing here is he takes that history, and then his comment on that is, yet they kept on sinning against him, rebelling against the Most High in the desert. And then he talks about that. They were, here he did all this coming out of Egypt. And then they start saying, well, he can't feed us. God can't feed us.
Right.
He might be able to get us through the water. He might be able to strike a rock, but he can't give us, bread and meat.
Yeah.
And what do you see there in verse 21?
Well, I mean, the anger of God. Right?
Yeah.
The fire of his wrath.
Yeah. But what's interesting is how did God show his anger?
Yeah,
Verse
by
24.
feeding them, by giving them water, by giving them food.
Yeah, giving them manna, bread from heaven, and just
and the birds from the quail.
Yeah, rain down meat. Just didn't give it. He rained it down, and you almost, I don't know. Sometimes as a parent, you get exasperated with your kids.
I just want to go on record. I don't ever get exasperated. They're just precious gems.
Well, and you know what? I don't either. But I'm thinking about when I was a kid and with my mom. She got exasperated with me. And there were times when I would ask her for something, and she would tell me no. And then I would kind of keep on it. And finally, she would just say, just go, and just basically, quote, give me permission. But she did it in anger, and it didn't feel the same,
Oh, wow, Dave. That's interesting. Unpack that more. Go with that?
Oh, it's not a counseling session, man.
No, well, I mean, it didn't feel the same. Why didn't
No,
so you're thinking the Israelites didn't appreciate or didn't feel good about how God had taken care of them?
Well, no, I don't know. It's just the way he phrases this, and I don't know how the Israelites felt at that time, because Asaph or whomever wrote this was not there. But there was something when my mom relented to me in anger. It felt different than if she would have relented to me because it's something that she wanted me to do. Now, I think he gets into that it's in God's anger that he did all of this. And then in verse 29, he says, the people ate their fill. He gave them what they craved. which I think we could spend. I hadn't thought about this before. I think we could spend a lot of time on that verse there. What?
Okay, so this is a good point. So if anybody is watching this and you've got an idea about that, or you want to, you're thinking right in there, give us, well,
Yeah.
I've always wondered about this, or I experienced this. We'd love to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because in Romans it talks about God handing people over to themselves. It's kind of like kind of like what my mom did. Maybe she didn't want me to do whatever it was because she knew it wasn't in my best interest because she loved me. But then finally, after a while, it's like, well, just like with your kids, you have to let them make their own decision. You have to let them go their way. You might counsel them or direct them differently, but in the end, you have to let them, do. And that's the image I get through here. Now, was this what God wanted to do? I don't know. The psalmist seems to be saying, all of this was through his anger because they didn't trust him.
Well, and while the meat was in their mouths, the anger of God rose against them.
Yeah, and he killed their strongest men. And again, he's going, you have to look back in the Genesis and Exodus and Numbers to see, some of the situations that came up. So, if you're not versed in the Old Testament, some of this will not make any sense, what he's trying to say. And I think, verse 32, but in spite of this, the people kept sinning. Even though God gave them what they craved, even though he took care of them, they continued to keep sinning. Despite his wonders, they refused to trust him. So he ended their lives in failure, their years in terror.
It's interesting because I'm so well versed in Psalm 77. It's almost a lead into this, right? Psalm 77 ends with them going through the Red Sea and how we can trust that. And then in Psalm 78, he then continues that story of the Exodus and continues to remind them, which right in Deuteronomy, that's the whole point of Deuteronomy. Just, you need to retell that story.
Yeah.
And Asaph is continuing to retell it. Listen to this because this is wisdom. This helps us keep, moving forward. And he's then gone from the stone on the rock where he hits that and water comes out, the feeding, but also the pain they suffer when they don't listen to God.
And it's through this killing, it says that they finally remembered that God was their rock. That God Most High was their Redeemer. And then verse 36, that all they gave him was lip service. Their hearts were not loyal to him. They did not keep his covenant. Yet he was merciful and forgave their sins and did not destroy them all. Many times he held back his anger and did not unleash his fury. And verse 39 is one that I take comfort in. For he remembered that they were merely mortal, gone like a breath of wind that never returns. Yeah. So remember that as you're trying to build your kingdom.
Yeah, I gave up building kingdoms a long time ago.
Yeah. It's like building sandcastles, isn't it?
I was never good at that either.
Yeah, well, the water comes and takes it all away. You work so hard. Nothing.
Wash it away.
Nothing.
Merely mortals.
Yeah.
He remembered. I love that, Dave, that he remembered, because that what's the one word for that, right? Grace.
Yeah.
They're
mercy.
They're merely mortals.
Compassion. Yeah.
Yeah. Mercy.
Yeah.
All right.
And then it just continues on that way. There are distinct sections, and it's about how Israel forgot, but God did not forget. And verse 40, oh, how often they rebelled against him in the wilderness and grieved his heart in that dry wasteland. Again, they tested his patience and provoked the Holy One of Israel. They did not remember. See, God remembers. They did not. And then it goes through this long section really about what he did to Egypt. And that, verse 42, the second part of that, and how he rescued them from their enemies. He defeated their enemies through a series of plagues, and that's what he is talking about through here. All the way down to, this whole section, verse 53. He kept them safe so they were not afraid, but the sea covered their enemies. That was as he walked through the red or the reed seed, whichever you want to say, the water. They walked through on dry land, but the waters covered their enemies. And then he drove out the nations before them. But what did they do? Verse 56.
Yeah. Poke, test.
Yeah. They were as faithless as their parents, and they were as undependable as a crooked bow. I'm thinking that's not good.
It suddenly reminded me of when I was a child, second grade time. Mom and Dad took us to Walt Disney World down in Florida, and I can remember coming home and not being so grateful for the trip. There were a lot of things that just were not. It just didn't work out that well. Now, it was great to spend time with them, and we took our grandma, and it was great. But I don't really remember having fond memories of the trip, and I don't know that we were really that grateful for all that Dad had done to make that possible for us. Wow. And Mom, the sacrifices they had to make to get us there, to experience it, to come home safely. And it just reminds me of the people of Israel. God's taking them on this journey to a place, magical kingdom that he's got set up for them. And they're just the most ungrateful bunch of people. Yeah. Maybe they're almost as old as second graders in their emotional journey as a nation, as a people.
And I'm so glad that was them,
Yeah,
I know.
Because if it was us, then
yeah.
I know people in our church just like this. Other people, not me, but other people just like this. They're just terrible. I've always said the church would be great if it didn't have people in it. Because they're just like this.
Yeah. And this is the whole reason for this psalm. At least the psalmist is saying, learn from this. If you look deep enough, he says, into this parable, this riddle, you will see, perhaps you will see yourself, because isn't that really the point of parables and riddles in some ways, to see yourself?
It's a reflection. It's a mirror of your own human condition.
Yeah. When King David had sinned with Bathsheba, the prophet went in there and told him a story, and David saw himself in that story. Who is this man? Well, that's true. That's true. He did.
Yeah. First it's like, well, this is outrageous, and then it's like, oh wait, it's me.
Yeah. Oops. Who is the man? And he goes, you are. So maybe that's what we need to say as we go through this. Well, who are these people? Israel? No, it's you.
Yeah.
And it's me, because we have been blessed.
Yeah. And that's the revelation that came to you then yesterday.
The revelation? No, that's not the revelation. That's the one that came to me right now as we talk through this.
Okay. Well, we've got 2 minutes left, so tell me your revelation about this.
Well, let's. We're almost done. We've almost gone through all 72 verses.
I'm just the duck on the wall, Dave. I'm just the duck on the wall.
Yeah. But basically, this section talks about how they started worshiping other gods. Even though God had done all this, they started worshiping other gods. And then the Lord rose as though waking from sleep, like a warrior aroused from a drunken stupor.
That's an image of God I'd never thought about.
It is. He routed his enemies and set them to eternal shame. And again, it's talking about rejecting Shiloh, where they were worshiping, but he ended up choosing Jerusalem. And David, you had Saul before, which was kind of disaster, but then ended up with David. In the very end, verse 72, it says he cared for them with a true heart and led them with skillful hands. So through all of this, God is caring for them, and he's leading them. And the revelation that I had yesterday was that what the psalmist is doing is showing all the places where Israel was unfaithful, but at each point, God was faithful, even though. And even though they turned to other gods, and even though they turned their back on God, he never turned his back on them. And I thought, how many times have I turned my back on God? And each time God is gracious and merciful and compassionate, and doesn't treat me as I deserve, but yet treats me with grace and kindness and compassion. And that's the only way I think that we can not repeat these the problems of the past, is like you said, to have that gratefulness and recognize that, yeah, we are mortal and we are like breath and we will fail and we will fall, but God is faithful in all of that. So that was kind of my revelation yesterday.
That is a great verse, even just even the way it's written, with a true heart.
Yeah.
You know, and I've got the ESV, and it also says skillful hand, but mine says shepherded them and guided them with an upright heart. Is what, but I mean, a true heart. I mean, that's a great image just by itself.
Yeah, and through this, we learn what a true heart looks like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe you've got folks in your life that have been faithless and have continued to balk at you, even though all you've done is shown them kindness and graciousness and mercy. And sometimes it's like, that's it, I'm done. But yet that's not a true heart. God shows what that true heart is, and that's never giving up, because we're all mortal. We will all fail. We will fail God. We will fail one another. But in the end, God shows what it looks like to have grace and mercy, and never give up on his people, which we are included in that now. So that's all I
that's
got.
Great. That's great. Well, that's a great word for us as we go into our week. I don't know about anybody else, but this has been a tough time for me. I think I was doing really well when I thought this was a sprint. And now that I've decided that the COVID and everything is a marathon, it's gotten a little, it's changed things. We're not getting to hug the people we love the way I'd like to. We're not getting to spend time. And so I'm not always the best example of a follower of Christ. I mean, I'm not burning down things and, causing those kind of burning, but I certainly am in need of God's grace more than ever. I'm in need of that true heart, who can shepherd me through the good. Well, there we go. We've got some folks, if you're watching this, we've got some new tech, and so we're working on that. So
working through that. Hopefully this actually shows up somewhere at some point.
We are at the end of our time, and I hope that this is, again, it's a long psalm. If you've been reading through it each day this week, it's taking you a little bit more time, but brilliant stuff, really good insights. And I appreciate, Dave, you leading us through this. Next week, it's Psalm 79. It's a mere 13 verses, and I promise Scout's Honor that I'll be able to read that, and we'll have a good talk together. But folks,
you were
thanks
a
lot for. I was a Cub Scout. I was a Scout Master. I was a den leader.
Wow!
Faithful,
once a Scout, always
faithful
a Scout.
and true.
Oh, just like God, faithful and true.
All right, guys. Hey, thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you next week. Have a blessed week.
Yes.
And at the end we can say we put it in the can. Is that the phrase?
I don't know. I don't know the phrase you're looking for.
I don't either.
All right.
But I like a lot. All right.
I did a book report once in high school, and this actually worked. It was Stephen King, and I did not finish the book. And so I told them that I wasn't going to ruin the ending for them.
That's brilliant. That's really smart.